If you're a video game collector, one of the main things is you want to keep your games organized. You want to keep them protected. And this is fairly easy with recent games, GameCube, Wii, Xbox, what have you, because they come in their own cases. They have their manual that you can slide into the cover, keeps everything together. This is not the case, pun not intended, with cartridge-based games. So how do you keep your cartridge games organized? How do you keep them protected? Well, it's fairly easy to do with NES, NES games because they're quite big and they have end labels. So you can just stack them up on a shelf and they're organized. You can keep them in alphabetical order or whatever order pertains to you. Now, what about Game Boy games? It's hard to keep Game Boy games organized because they're pretty small, especially Game Boy Advance, which is like that big at most. And if you wanted to keep those organized, you'd have to be lucky enough to actually own the box. But the thing is that the Game Boy Advance boxes aren't really all that great for organizing games because they're kind of flimsy. Like, this is my brother's case, and I've flattened it a little bit, but you can tell that there's creases on like every side. You can tell my brother owned this one. And not everybody's going to be lucky enough to have the boxes for every game in their collection. So instead of keeping your games in this, why not keep them in this? And what is this, you're asking? This is a Nintendo DS case with the game inside. Keeps it organized. I currently have an entire shelf of these. Let me grab a couple more. And these are Game Boy Advance games. Now, what this is right here is that all this is a DS case with a custom insert. All these inserts is just scans of the box itself. Like, you can see the cover's the same, except this is player's choice on it, and the back's the same. The only difference is the sides, because on the inserts themselves they have this little bar right here that say Game Boy Advance, which I really like because almost every other cased game has something like that. GameCube, Wii, DS. Keeps it more modern, I guess. And one thing that's good is that if you have the manual, you can easily just put the manual right in there where the DS manual would be. I learned about this idea from Alpha Omega Sin, Billy from the Game Chasers, and it was a really good idea to me because I don't want to have just boxes of Game Boy Advance games that it's hard to organize. It's hard to just look at them. Like, when I'm bored, I'll scan my shelves and say, "Ew, I want to play this game." But you can't really do that if a whole bunch of games are just in a box in a corner somewhere. So here I actually get to display what games I have. But how do you come about getting empty DS cases, I'm sure you're asking? Well, you can do this a few ways. I've heard people say that you can just go to GameStop and ask for the cases. I'm sure that'll work for other people, but all the GameStops around where I live, they never have them. But another way is to just buy the cases online, which has its plus sides but has bad sides. If you are to buy the cases from Nintendo, they remade their cases, so they actually do not have the slot for the Game Boy Advance, it's just for the DS card. While that may seem like a down note, it actually isn't. So what you can do, this is one of the things I did starting out with this project, is just buy the cases from Nintendo, and then when you get those, just flip out all the stuff of the DS games you have, and then use those cases. Another way is that you can actually buy these knockoff copies. Like you can see that the one I have Mario covered in is actually dark and not gray. These knockoff cases they're good and they're bad. Don't buy these off of Amazon, because there's some fuck who says that he's selling 10 but you'll just get 1. So don't buy these off of Amazon. I'll have a link in the description below. You get like 50 of these knockoff cases for like a really good price. I forgot what it was. But the only downside to these knockoff cases is that they don't have the Game Boy Advance thing situated properly. So you have to cut off the top part right here just so it'll fit. You can easily cut pieces off with a knife, an X-Acto knife, a razor, anything sharp, because the plastic's actually pretty flimsy. But then you're asking yourself, well, there's only a slot for the Game Boy Advance games. What about original Game Boy? For original Game Boy, this is where it gets a bit trickier. First off, it's going to be upside down in the case. So if that looks goofy to you, then, you know. But what you're going to have to do is take a razor and you cut out the top part of the DS holder and the bottom thing of where the GBA thing is, and it fits right in. And unfortunately, the Game Boy manuals don't really fit properly, so I kind of have to like smash it in there. And then another question is, where do you get these inserts, like the patterns for what you print out? I'm sure that there's other sites out there, but the main one that I use is the coverproject.net. The coverproject.net has a wider range of patterns and stuff. And one thing that I found was pretty cool is that it doesn't just have the retail cover art. You can also get custom made cover art. You know, you can have Bland Link's Awakening, or you could have this one. I have both because why not? Yeah. And I'll have a link down below to the NES Complex, who talks more about using the cover project for NES, Super NES, N64. Like, I'm just talking about handheld games. Because to shelf the console games, you're going to need a lot of space, which I do not have, unfortunately. And they don't just have retro games on the cover project, they also have new games, which is really good if you're like me and you go to GameStop and then you get some bullshit like this. Another good thing is if you're an owner of the Wii and it comes with this game, all it is an insert of this just expanded out in Photoshop. The downside to using the cover project to hold your games is that it's going to cost you some money, you know, for the cases, for the paper and ink for printing these out. Though if you want to save money doing that, what I do is I go to FedEx Kinko's and I just have like a butt ton just printed out. Like, these are 2 games that I thought I had, but I don't. So once you get it printed out, the insert looks like this. And so you just cut off the access and it fits right in. So yes, doing this project is going to cost you some time, money, especially if you don't have the tools like I didn't at the start of this. And it's going to cost you a lot of shelf space. Like, I currently have an entire shelf filled up of Game Boy Advance games, which used to all fit into one box. Also, another downside is if you import games. I don't, but just if you do, the manuals for Japanese Game Boy games actually do not fit in the cases because they're a lot longer. So no matter which way you situate them, they're not going to fit, unfortunately. One major downside to the cover project is that not every game is in their database, which is unfortunate because they actually, one of the major games they don't have is the Pokemon Ranger games for DS or the Kingdom Hearts games for DS. But they update their site pretty regularly, and you can even join the forums and request some covers. Well, that's my thoughts on the cover project. If you want to learn more, I'll have more links in the description of more charismatic people talking about this project. I'm just trying my best to spread the word because this is possibly one of my favorite things about video game collecting. And it really helps me when I'm collecting for Game Boy Advance games. Because there's a lot of good Game Boy games that I missed as a kid, and this is my way of just, trying to go back further. I don't want to just stick to collecting console games. Another upside to the cover project is this is really good if you happen to go to one of the shitty GameStops where they actually put the stickers on the label themselves, like usually down here. Or if you just have a bad label on as is, or if you bought the game and it didn't even have a case. Like right here, Pikmin. My brother gave me this game, and it was just the case itself. So for the longest time, I just had it in like a normal CD clamshell case. But because of the cover project, I actually get to display it as it should. So that's my thoughts on the cover project. Like I said, there will be more links in the doobly-doo. And just tell me what you think of this project. Do you think it's, do you agree with me and you think that it's a really great idea? Or do you think that I'm just talking to thin air, I guess? I don't know. I really shouldn't make videos when I'm sick. I can't talk straight. So, until next time, cheerio.